The dusty August heat of Colorado Territory in 1878 settled over Julesburg like a wool blanket as Adelaide Harper stepped off the stagecoach with nothing but a worn carpetbag and the last threads of her dignity holding her together. She had traveled 3 weeks from St. Louis after her husband's death left her with nothing but debts and broken promises, and the newspaper advertisement she clutched in her sweating palm offered the only hope she had left. Washerwoman needed, steady work, room provided, apply at the general store. Adelaide was 22 years old, widowed for 6 months, and desperate enough to travel 1,000 miles for the chance to wash other people's clothes. The alternative had been far worse, staying with her late husband's brother, who had made his intentions toward her disgustingly clear the day after the funeral. The general store smelled of leather, tobacco, and the sharp bite of pickle brine. A portly man with spectacles perched on his red nose looked up from his ledger as the bell above the door jangled. "Help you, miss?" he asked, taking in her dusty traveling dress and the determined set of her jaw. "I am here about the advertisement," Adelaide said, pulling the crumpled newspaper from her bag, "for the washerwoman position." The storekeeper's eyebrows rose nearly to his hairline. "That their position is for work at the Sutton Ranch, about 5 miles west of here. Old Randall Sutton, he lives out there alone since his wife passed on some 4 years back. Decent man, keeps to himself mostly. Ranch is doing well enough, cattle and some horses. He just cannot seem to keep help around the house." Had 3 different women come out there, but none stayed more than a few weeks. Adelaide's heart sank slightly, but she kept her expression neutral. "Why did they leave?" the storekeeper shrugged, scratching his bulbous nose. "Hard to say for certain. Some said it was too lonely out there, too far from town. Others said Randall was too particular, too set in his ways. I think they just were not suited for ranch life. Takes a certain kind of person to handle the isolation and the hard work, but the pay is fair, and Randall is honest. He will not cheat you or mistreat you. That much I can vouch for. Can you direct me to his ranch?" Adelaide asked, squaring her shoulders. The storekeeper gave her directions and offered to let her rest a spell, but Adelaide declined. She had learned in the past 6 months that hesitation only made difficult things harder. Better to plunge forward and deal with whatever came. The walk to the Sutton Ranch took her nearly 2 hours in the afternoon heat. The landscape was a study in browns and golds, with scrub brush dotting the rolling plains and the distant mountains providing a dramatic backdrop. Adelaide's feet ached in her worn boots, and sweat trickled down her spine beneath her corset, but she pressed on. She had walked through worse since Thomas died, walked through shame and grief, and the horrible realization that the man she had married was not who she thought he was at all. The Sutton Ranch appeared gradually, first as a shimmer in the heat, then solidifying into a rambling single-story house with a wide porch, several outbuildings, a barn and corrals stretching behind. Cattle dotted the landscape, and she could hear the distant lowing of cows and the occasional whinny of horses. It was more substantial than she had expected, not the rough homestead she had pictured. As she approached the main house, a man emerged from the barn. Even from a distance, Adelaide could see he was tall and broad-shouldered, moving with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in his own domain. As she drew closer, she could make out more details. He was perhaps 30 years old, with dark hair that fell to his collar and sun-bronzed skin that spoke of long hours outdoors. His face was angular and would have been handsome if not for the hardness around his eyes and mouth, the look of a man who had forgotten how to smile. He stopped when he saw her, one hand resting on the fence rail, and waited as she covered the last 100 yards to the house. "Mr. Sutton?" Adelaide called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "That would be me," he replied, his voice a deep rumble. "Randall Sutton." "What brings you out here, miss? You are a long way from town on foot." "I am Adelaide Harper. I have come about the position, the washerwoman position." Randall's expression shifted from mild curiosity to something more guarded. He looked her over, not in the leering way men sometimes did, but with the assessing gaze of someone evaluating livestock. "You came all the way out here for that. Did Johnson at the store not explain what happened to the last women who tried?" "He mentioned they did not stay long," Adelaide said, meeting his gaze directly. "But I am not them." Something flickered in Randall's eyes, perhaps respect, perhaps merely interest. "Well then, come on up to the house and we will discuss it properly. You look about ready to collapse from the heat." Adelaide followed him to the porch, relieved to step into the shade. Up close, Randall Sutton was even more imposing, easily 6 feet tall with broad shoulders and strong hands that looked like they had never known an idle day. But there was something in the way he moved, a carefulness, an isolation that seemed to surround him like an invisible wall. "Wait here," he said, and disappeared into the house. He returned a moment later with a tin cup of water, which Adelaide accepted gratefully. The water was cool and sweet, likely from a well, and she drank it slowly, mindful not to gulp despite her thirst. "Thank you," she said, handing back the cup. Randall nodded and leaned against the porch rail, crossing his arms. "I will be straight with you, Miss Harper. The work here is hard. I have a ranch to run, which means I am up before dawn and often not back until after dark. I need someone who can handle the house, do the washing and mending, cook meals, keep things in order. The pay is $20 a month plus room and board. You would have your own room in the house, and Sundays are your own unless there is an emergency." "That sounds more than fair," Adelaide said. $20 a month was better than she had hoped for, certainly better than the pittance she would have made taking in laundry in St. Louis, assuming she could have afforded a place to live while doing so. "The thing is," Randall continued, his expression darkening slightly, "it gets lonely out here. Real lonely. The nearest neighbors are the Patterson family, about 3 miles east, and while they are good people, it is not like living in town where there is always someone to talk to or something to do. The work is steady, and the winters are harsh. Last woman who came out here lasted 2 weeks before she said the silence was driving her mad." Adelaide considered this. Silence sounded like a blessing compared to the chaos of the past months. "Mr. Sutton, I will be honest with you as well. I am a widow. My husband died 6 months ago and left me with nothing but debts. I have no family I care to return to, no prospects, and nowhere else to go. I am not afraid of hard work, and I am not afraid of loneliness. In fact, I would welcome it. I need this position, and I promise you I will do the work well and I will not complain." Randall studied her for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face. Whatever he saw there seemed to satisfy him because he nodded slowly. "All right then. We will try it for a month and see how it goes. If it suits us both, you can stay on. If not, I will pay you for your time and arrange transport back to town." "Thank you," Adelaide said, relief flooding through her so intensely that her knees felt weak. "You will not regret this, Mr. Sutton. Call me Randall," he said gruffly. "No point in formality when we will be living under the same roof. Come on, I will show you the house and your room." The inside of the house was a revelation. Adelaide had expected bachelor squalor, but while the place was certainly dusty and showing signs of neglect, it was fundamentally well built and well furnished. The main room served as both living area and dining room, with a large stone fireplace dominating one wall. The furniture was solid and well made, if a bit worn. A doorway led to a kitchen that was surprisingly spacious, with a good stove, a large sink with a pump, and ample counter space. "My wife Sarah was particular about her kitchen," Randall said quietly, noticing Adelaide's appraisal. "She planned it herself before we built the house. That was 9 years ago when I first claimed this land. It is a fine kitchen," Adelaide said truthfully. She had good taste. Randall's expression softened slightly at the compliment. "She did. Come on, I will show you where you will sleep." The house had 4 bedrooms. Randall's was at the far end of the hall, and he pointed it out but did not show her inside. The room he led her to was smaller but still comfortable, with a real bed frame, a mattress that looked reasonably clean, a dresser, a washstand, and even a small mirror on the wall. A window looked out over the eastern pastures, and Adelaide could see the distant line of trees that likely marked a creek or river. "It is perfect," Adelaide said. "Thank you. Nothing fancy, but it is clean and the roof does not leak," Randall said. "There is linens in the chest at the foot of the bed. Washroom is the small room next to the kitchen. I know it is not what you might be used to." Adelaide almost laughed at that. In the final weeks before Thomas died, they had been living in a boarding house room barely large enough for a bed. This was luxury by comparison. "It is more than adequate," she assured him. "Good. Well, you probably want to settle in. I will be working until supper time. If you feel up to it, there are supplies in the kitchen and you could start then, but if you need to rest, I can fend for myself tonight." "I will cook supper," Adelaide said firmly. "What time do you usually eat?" "Around 7, after I have seen to the animals for the night." "Then supper will be ready at 7, Adelaide promised. Randall nodded, looking slightly uncomfortable with the arrangement despite having proposed it. "Right then, I will leave you to it." He paused at the doorway. "Adelaide, thank you for coming all this way. I hope it works out." "So do I," she said softly. After Randall left, Adelaide sank onto the bed and allowed herself a moment to simply breathe. She had done it. She had found a position, a place to stay, a fresh start. For the first time since Thomas's death, she felt a small flicker of something that might have been hope, but there was no time to dwell on it. She had work to do. Adelaide spent the next hour exploring the house more thoroughly and taking stock of what needed to be done. The layers of dust suggested that Randall had been managing on his own for some time, and while he kept the essentials clean, the deeper maintenance had clearly been neglected. She found his laundry piled in a basket in the washroom, a mountain of shirts, trousers, and linens that would take her days to work through properly. In the kitchen, she found the supplies Randall had mentioned. There was salt pork, beans, flour, cornmeal, a few eggs from what must be chickens somewhere on the property, and some withered potatoes. Not much to work with, but Adelaide had learned to make do with less. She started a pot of beans soaking and then went outside to explore the immediate area around the house. Behind the kitchen, she found a good well with a pump that worked smoothly, a relief since water was the foundation of all her work. There was also a large iron pot for boiling laundry, currently lying on its side near a fire pit, and several wooden tubs for washing and rinsing. The chickens were in a coop near the barn, and Adelaide gathered a few more eggs, pleased to see they were relatively fresh. She also discovered a small vegetable garden, or what had once been one. Now it was mostly overrun with weeds, though she could see a few hardy tomato plants struggling through and some herbs that had gone mostly wild. It would need work, but it was there, and Adelaide felt another small surge of satisfaction. She had always enjoyed gardening, and the thought of coaxing this plot back to life appealed to her. By the time 7 o'clock approached, Adelaide had managed to put together a respectable meal. The beans would not be ready until tomorrow, but she made cornbread in the oven, fried some of the salt pork with the potatoes, and scrambled eggs with some of the wild herbs she had found. It was simple fare, but it was hot and filling. Randall appeared at the back door precisely at 7, having washed up at the pump outside. His hair was damp and his sleeves were rolled up, showing forearms roped with muscle. He stopped short when he saw the table, set with 2 places and serving dishes in the center. "You did not have to go to all this trouble," he said, but there was something in his voice, a strain of emotion that suggested he appreciated it more than he wanted to admit. "It is my job," Adelaide said simply. "Please sit. Everything is ready." They sat across from each other at the table, and for a moment there was an awkward silence. Adelaide realized this was probably the first time Randall had shared a meal with someone at this table since his wife died. The weight of that hung in the air between them. "It looks good," Randall said finally, serving himself some of the potatoes and pork. "Smells good too." "Thank you. I am afraid the beans need soaking overnight, but I will make them for tomorrow." They ate in silence for a few minutes. Adelaide was too hungry to be self-conscious about it, and Randall seemed focused on his food in a way that suggested he had been eating poorly for some time. She noticed the way his clothes hung a bit loose on his frame, as though he had lost weight. "This is real good," Randall said after his 3rd helping of cornbread. "Best meal I have had in a long time. I am glad you like it. If you let me know what supplies you have available or if there is a way for me to purchase more from town, I can plan meals better. I go into town every couple of weeks for supplies. Next trip is this Saturday. You can come along and pick out what you need, and I will settle the account." "That would be helpful, thank you." Another silence fell, but it was slightly less awkward this time. Adelaide gathered her courage and asked the question that had been on her mind. "How many cattle do you run here?" Randall looked surprised that she had asked. "About 200 head right now. I have help during roundup and branding season, but mostly I can manage on my own. Also got about a dozen horses, some for riding, some for breeding. It keeps me busy." "It sounds like a lot of work for one person." "It is," Randall admitted. "But I manage. Had a hand helping me for a while, but he moved on last spring. Hard to find good help who wants to stay out here." Adelaide understood that sentiment all too well. "Well, at least now you will have help with the house." "Yes," Randall said, meeting her eyes. "That is something." He paused, then added, "I want to thank you again for coming. I know it is not easy, coming to a strange place to work for someone you do not know. But I want you to know you are safe here. I will not interfere with you or make you uncomfortable. You have my word on that." Adelaide felt a tightness in her chest ease slightly. She had been more worried about that than she wanted to admit. "I appreciate you saying that." After supper, Adelaide insisted on cleaning up while Randall went to complete his evening checks on the animals. By the time she had the kitchen restored to order, darkness had fallen completely, and the sounds of the night prairie drifted through the open windows. Crickets chirped, cattle lowed softly in the distance, and somewhere a coyote howled, the sound lonely and wild. Adelaide prepared for bed in her small room, washing up with water from the pitcher on the washstand. The sheets smelled of sun and prairie air, and as she lay down in the darkness, she felt her body relax for the first time in months. She was safe here. She had work and a roof over her head and an employer who seemed decent. It was more than she had dared hope for in the dark on the other side of the house. Randall lay awake in his own bed, staring at the ceiling. The house felt different tonight. Not just because there was someone else in it, but because of the small changes Adelaide had already made. The smell of proper cooking. The table set nicely. The sound of another person moving around, living and breathing in rooms that had been silent for so long. It unsettled him, but not in a bad way. More like waking up a limb that had gone numb, the pins and needles sensation of blood returning to somewhere that had been cut off for too long. He thought about Adelaide's steady gaze, the way she had not flinched when he told her about the loneliness, the quiet determination in the set of her shoulders. She was running from something, that much was clear. But then again, so was half the population of the West. He hoped she would stay. Surprised himself with how much he hoped it. The days that followed developed into a rhythm. Adelaide rose before dawn and had coffee ready when Randall came into the kitchen. He took it black and strong, and they would share a quiet breakfast before he headed out to begin his work. Then Adelaide would throw herself into the monumental task of bringing the house back to proper order. She started with the laundry, the pile of which seemed to grow rather than shrink as she went through the house. Randall's clothes were worn but well made, and she took care with them, heating water in the big pot outside, scrubbing each item thoroughly, and hanging them to dry on the lines she strung between two posts. Her hands grew red and raw from the lye soap, but she did not mind. There was something satisfying about seeing the clean clothes flapping in the prairie wind, bright against the endless blue sky. In the evenings, after supper, she would sit on the porch and do the mending while the sun set in spectacular displays of orange and gold. Randall's work shirts were full of small tears and worn spots, and she patched them carefully, her needle flashing in the fading light. Randall would often sit with her, ostensibly working on some bit of leather tack or sharpening a knife. But Adelaide sensed he was simply unused to being alone in the evenings. They did not talk much at first, but there was something companionable about the shared silence, the knowledge of another person nearby. On Saturday, true to his word, Randall hitched up the wagon and they made the journey into Julesburg together. Adelaide had worried it might be awkward, but Randall pointed out various features of the landscape as they drove, showing her where the creek ran year-round, where he planned to move the cattle for fall grazing, where a particular stand of cottonwoods marked the edge of his property. In town, Adelaide felt the weight of curious stares as she walked through the general store with Randall. She kept her head high and focused on selecting supplies, choosing flour, sugar, dried beans, salt pork, and a few precious luxuries like real coffee and a small tin of baking powder. Randall paid without comment and they loaded the supplies into the wagon. "Need anything else while we are here?" Randall asked. Adelaide hesitated, then said, "If there is a dry goods store, I could use some thread and perhaps some fabric scraps for patches." "Over here," Randall said, leading her to a small shop 2 doors down. Inside, Adelaide felt like she had stepped into a treasure trove. Bolts of fabric lined the walls, and there were jars of buttons, spools of thread in every color, ribbons and lace. The woman behind the counter was perhaps 50, with kind eyes and graying hair. "Randall Sutton, as I live and breathe. I have not seen you in town in an age. And who is this?" "Mrs. Patterson, this is Miss Adelaide Harper. She is working at the ranch now, keeping the house." Mrs. Patterson's eyebrows rose with interest. "Is that so? Well, it is about time you got some proper help out there. Pleased to meet you, dear. What can I help you with today?" Adelaide selected what she needed, and Mrs. Patterson threw in a few extra scraps of fabric to welcome you to Julesburg. As they were leaving, Mrs. Patterson called out, "You bring her to church tomorrow, Randall. She should meet folks properly." Randall looked uncomfortable but nodded. On the ride back to the ranch, Adelaide asked, "Do you not usually attend church?" "Have not been in a while," Randall admitted. "Not since Sarah died. Did not see the point." Adelaide understood that too. She had stopped attending after Thomas's death, unable to bear the pitying looks and whispered speculation. "You do not have to take me if you do not want to go." No, Mrs. Patterson is right. You should meet people. And I suppose it would not kill me to show my face once in a while. He glanced at her. You have a proper dress for it. Adelaide flushed. I have this one and one other. They are both rather worn. Randall was quiet for a moment. There is a trunk in the spare bedroom. It has some of Sarah's things. She was about your size. You are welcome to anything in there that you can use. Adelaide did not know what to say. The offer was generous but also deeply personal. I could not. They were hers. They are just sitting there doing nobody any good, Randall said gruffly. Sarah would have wanted them used. She was practical that way. At least look through it. If nothing else, maybe there is fabric you could remake. That night, Adelaide opened the trunk in the spare room with reverent hands. Inside were dresses carefully folded and preserved, some everyday calico, and one beautiful Sunday dress in dark blue wool with black trim. There were also shawls, petticoats, and at the bottom, a wedding dress wrapped in tissue paper. Adelaide lifted the Sunday dress and held it up. It would fit, perhaps with minor alterations. The fabric was good quality and barely worn. She thought about the woman who had owned this, who had walked these same rooms and slept in this house and loved the man who now moved through it like a ghost. She altered the blue dress that evening, taking in the waist slightly and letting down the hem. It fit her perfectly, and when she looked at herself in the small mirror, she barely recognized the woman looking back. She looked respectable, settled, like someone who belonged somewhere. Sunday morning, Randall appeared in a clean shirt and dark trousers, his hair neatly combed and his jaw freshly shaved. Adelaide noticed he looked younger without the perpetual stubble, more like the man he might have been before grief carved lines into his face. You look nice, he said when he saw her in the blue dress, then immediately looked uncomfortable as if worried he had overstepped. Thank you. So do you. The drive to town was quiet, both of them nervous in their own ways. The church was a simple white building with a steeple, and people were gathering outside in their Sunday best. Adelaide felt the weight of their attention as she and Randall approached. Mrs. Patterson swooped in immediately, taking Adelaide under her wing and introducing her to what felt like half of Julesburg. There was the minister, Reverend Walsh, and his wife, the doctor, Dr. Martin, and his family, various ranchers and their wives, shopkeepers, and townsfolk. Everyone was polite, though Adelaide could see the curiosity in their eyes. A young widow working at Randall Sutton's ranch was clearly going to be the subject of much speculation. During the service, Adelaide sat next to Randall in a pew near the back. She was acutely aware of his presence beside her, the solid warmth of him, the way he held the hymnal for her to see even though she suspected he was not actually reading it. When the congregation sang, she heard his voice, a low rumble that was surprisingly pleasant. After the service, Mrs. Patterson insisted they come to dinner at the Patterson Ranch. It is on your way home anyway, and I will not take no for an answer. Jim will want to see you. Randall and Adelaide should meet the children. The Patterson Ranch was smaller than Randall's but well maintained, with a cheerful chaos that came from having 5 children ranging from 6 to 16 years old. Jim Patterson was a big, jovial man who clearly enjoyed teasing Randall, though there was genuine affection beneath the jokes. About time you got some help out there, Jim said, echoing his wife's sentiments. Place was starting to look like a bachelor dungeon. It was not that bad, Randall protested. It was pretty bad, Jim said, grinning. Remember when I came by last winter, and you had been eating nothing but beans for 3 weeks straight? Adelaide caught Randall's eye and saw the faint color rising in his cheeks. She hid a smile. It was nice to see him around people who clearly cared about him, who saw past the walls he had built around himself. The Patterson children took to Adelaide immediately, especially the youngest girl, Lucy, who climbed into her lap during dessert and declared she was going to marry someone exactly like Adelaide when she grew up. Everyone laughed, and Adelaide felt a warmth spread through her chest. This was what she had missed, what Thomas had never given her. A sense of community, of belonging, of being part of something larger than just survival. On the drive home, as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, Randall said, "Thank you for coming today. I know it was probably overwhelming." "It was nice," Adelaide said honestly. "The Pattersons are lovely people. You are lucky to have such good neighbors." "They have been very kind," Randall agreed. "Especially after Sarah died. I do not know how I would have managed without them." It was the first time he had really spoken about his wife's death directly. Adelaide waited, sensing he might say more. "She got sick one winter," Randall continued, his voice low. "Started as just a cough, but it got worse. By the time I got the doctor out here, it had turned to pneumonia. She died 3 days later." He paused. "I was angry for a long time. Angry at her for leaving, angry at God, angry at myself for not getting help sooner. The Pattersons, they just kept showing up, bringing food, checking on me, dragging me to things when I wanted to hide. I owe them a lot." "I am sorry," Adelaide said softly. "That must have been terrible." "It was. But time passes whether you are ready for it or not, and after a while the anger fades and you are just left with the emptiness." He glanced at her. "I suspect you know something about that." Adelaide nodded. "My husband died 6 months ago, though if I am being honest, I was alone long before that. Thomas was a gambler and a drinker. He was charming when we met, but the charm hid a lot of ugliness. By the end, he had gambled away everything we had and then some. When he died, he left me with nothing but debts and a relief I was ashamed to feel." She had not meant to say so much, but something about the way Randall listened, the lack of judgment in his expression, made the words flow out. "That must have been hard," Randall said. "Losing someone is difficult. Losing someone and feeling relieved about it must be even harder." "Yes," Adelaide whispered. It was the first time anyone had acknowledged that, the complicated tangle of emotions she carried. "I felt like I was supposed to grieve, but mostly I was just tired. And scared. I had nowhere to go and no way to support myself. Coming here was a last resort, but now I am glad I did." "I am glad you did too," Randall said, and the sincerity in his voice made Adelaide's throat tighten with unexpected emotion. The weeks flowed into a month, and then 2. Adelaide settled into life at the ranch with a contentment that surprised her. The work was hard, but it was satisfying in a way her life with Thomas had never been. She could see the fruits of her labor everywhere she looked, from the gleaming kitchen to the neatly organized pantry to the garden she had coaxed back to life. The vegetables she harvested from that garden transformed their meals. Fresh tomatoes, squash, and beans appeared on the table, and Adelaide took pride in setting out food that was not just filling but genuinely good. Randall noticed. He complimented her cooking often, and she noticed he had put on weight, filling out his frame in a way that suggested he was finally eating properly again. More than that, he seemed less alone. They had started talking more in the evenings, conversations that ranged from practical matters about the ranch to deeper discussions about their pasts, their hopes, their fears. Adelaide learned that Randall had come to Colorado from Missouri after the war, that he had built this ranch from nothing through sheer determination and backbreaking work. That his dream had been to create something lasting, something to pass down to children who never came. "Sarah and I, we tried for years," he told her one evening as they sat on the porch watching the stars emerge. "It just never happened. I think that disappointed her more than she ever let on. She wanted a house full of children." "I am sorry," Adelaide said. "That must have been difficult for both of you." "It was. But we had each other, and that was enough. Or I thought it was. Now I wonder if maybe she was lonelier than I realized, out here with just me and the cattle for company." Adelaide understood that loneliness in her bones. "I think sometimes we do not realize how isolated we are until we are not anymore." Randall looked at her, his dark eyes reflecting the lamplight from the window. "Is that how you feel? Less isolated now?" "Yes," Adelaide admitted. "I did not expect that. I came here thinking I wanted solitude, but what I really needed was peace and purpose. I have both here." "I am glad," Randall said softly. "I would not want you to feel trapped here." "I do not," Adelaide assured him, and it was true. Somewhere along the way, this ranch had stopped feeling like an escape and started feeling like a home. The first real test of their arrangement came in early October when an early storm blew in from the mountains. The temperature dropped 30 degrees in a matter of hours, and rain lashed the ranch in freezing sheets. Randall came in from checking the cattle soaked to the bone and shivering despite his heavy coat. "Get those wet things off," Adelaide ordered, already putting water on to heat. "You are going to catch your death." "Just need to warm up a bit, then I have to go back out," Randall said, his teeth chattering. "Still have to check the north pasture." "You can barely stand," Adelaide protested. "At least change into dry clothes first." Randall disappeared to his room and came back in dry clothes but still looking chilled through. Adelaide had hot coffee ready and she pressed the cup into his hands. "Drink this, and I made stew for supper. It is hot." "You do not have to fuss," Randall protested, but he drank the coffee gratefully. "Someone has to," Adelaide retorted. "Now sit down and eat something before you go back out there." Randall started to argue, then seemed to think better of it. He sat and ate the stew Adelaide put in front of him, and she could see the color gradually returning to his face. When he finished, he looked at her with an expression she could not quite read. "Thank you," he said simply. "You are welcome. Now, is there anything I can help with?" "The animals, I mean." Randall shook his head. "Nothing for you to do in this weather. I just need to make sure the cattle in the north pasture have access to shelter. Should not take more than an hour." But 2 hours later, Randall still had not returned. Adelaide stood at the window, peering into the darkness, anxiety gnawing at her stomach. The storm had worsened and she could barely see past the porch. What if something had happened to him? What if he was hurt or lost? She was about to put on her own coat and go looking for him when she finally heard the sound of hoofbeats. Randall appeared out of the darkness, leading his horse to the barn. Adelaide waited, her heart pounding, until he came through the door. He was soaked again and there was blood on his sleeve. "You are hurt," Adelaide said, rushing to him. "It is nothing, just a scrape," Randall said, but he swayed slightly. Adelaide guided him to a chair with hands that were suddenly shaking. "Let me see." "Adelaide, it is fine." "Let me see," she repeated, more firmly this time. Randall sighed and peeled off his coat. The shirt beneath was torn, and there was a gash on his upper arm, still bleeding sluggishly. "Got caught on some barbed wire in the dark. Stupid mistake." Adelaide fetched water and clean cloth, her mind flashing back to nights with Thomas when she had patched up injuries from bar fights and drunken stumbles. But this was different. Randall was not drunk or reckless. He was just a man who had been trying to protect his livelihood in a storm. She cleaned the wound carefully, grateful to see it was not as deep as she had feared. "This needs stitches," she said. "I can manage," Randall said, but he did not pull away. "I can do it," Adelaide offered. "I have done it before." Randall looked surprised but nodded. Adelaide retrieved the needle and thread she kept for mending and sterilized them in boiling water. Her hands were steady as she stitched the wound closed, and Randall sat perfectly still, barely flinching even though she knew it must hurt. "You are good at this," he said. "I had practice," Adelaide said, not elaborating. She tied off the last stitch and bandaged the wound with clean cloth. "There, keep it clean and it should heal well." "Thank you," Randall said, and when he looked at her, there was something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Gratitude, yes, but something more. Something that made her suddenly aware of how close they were, of the warmth of his skin beneath her hands, of the way his gaze held hers. She pulled back quickly, confused by the flutter in her chest. "You should rest. I will take care of everything else tonight." "Adelaide." She paused at the doorway. "I am glad you are here," Randall said softly. "So am I," Adelaide whispered, and fled to the kitchen before he could see the color rising in her cheeks. That night, lying in her bed, Adelaide stared at the ceiling and tried to make sense of the feelings swirling inside her. She cared about Randall. When had that happened? Somewhere between the shared meals and evening conversations, between the quiet companionship and mutual respect, something had shifted. She looked forward to his presence, worried about his safety, felt a warmth when he smiled at her that she had never felt with Thomas. It terrified her. She had told herself she was done with men, done with the risk and vulnerability that came with caring about someone. But Randall was different. He was kind and honest and steady. He treated her like an equal, valued her work, listened when she spoke. And he was grieving just as she was, both of them carrying the weight of failed or lost marriages and trying to find their way forward. Was this just loneliness, she wondered? Two people thrown together by circumstance, mistaking proximity for connection? Or was it something more? Adelaide did not have answers, so she pushed the thoughts aside and tried to sleep. The storm blew itself out by morning, leaving behind a landscape transformed by a light coating of snow. It melted by afternoon, but the cold remained, a reminder that winter was coming. Randall's arm healed cleanly, and he was careful to thank Adelaide every time she changed the bandage. The awkwardness that might have developed after that night never materialized. Instead, something had shifted between them, a new ease that came from having weathered something difficult together. Randall talked more, shared more of his thoughts and plans for the ranch. Adelaide found herself telling him stories from her childhood, the happy parts before her father died, and her mother remarried a man who resented having another mouth to feed. "Is that why you married young?" Randall asked one evening. Adelaide nodded. "Thomas seemed like an escape. He was handsome and charming, and he promised me the world. I was 18 and desperate to believe him. By the time I realized who he really was, it was too late." "You were young," Randall said gently. "We all make mistakes when we are young." "What about you?" Adelaide asked. "How did you and Sarah meet?" A smile crossed Randall's face, the first genuine smile Adelaide had seen from him. "At a church social back in Missouri. She was the prettiest girl there, and I was convinced she would never give me the time of day. But she asked me to dance, and we talked all night. She had this way of seeing right through people's nonsense, of knowing what they needed before they knew themselves. When I told her I wanted to come west and start a ranch, she did not hesitate, just said she would go anywhere with me as long as we were together." "She sounds wonderful," Adelaide said. "She was," Randall agreed. "I was lucky to have her for the time I did. But I think she would be glad to know life is going on here, that the house is not empty anymore. She would have liked you, I think." "I would have liked to have known her," Adelaide said honestly. As the weather grew colder, Adelaide and Randall fell into an even closer rhythm. She learned to anticipate what he needed, having hot meals ready when he came in from long cold days, keeping a pot of coffee warm on the stove, making sure his heavy coat was mended and his gloves were dry. Randall, in turn, brought her things from town without being asked. Fresh eggs from the general store, a new bar of lavender soap, a small bag of peppermint candy that made her feel like a child on Christmas morning. One Saturday, Randall came back from town with a package wrapped in brown paper. He handed it to Adelaide with an expression that was almost shy. "Saw this and thought of you." Inside was a length of beautiful green fabric, soft wool that would make a lovely dress. Adelaide stared at it, overwhelmed. "Randall, I cannot accept this. It is too much." "It is not charity," Randall said quickly. "You work hard and you deserve nice things. Besides, you have saved me more than the cost of that fabric in the money I am not spending eating in town or hiring someone to do repairs. Consider it a bonus." Adelaide touched the fabric, her eyes stinging with tears. No one had given her something just to be kind in so long. "Thank you," she whispered. "It is beautiful. Will you make something for yourself, a dress or something?" "Yes," Adelaide promised. "I will make a dress for Christmas." Christmas. The word hung in the air between them, full of implications. Would Adelaide still be here at Christmas? The initial month trial period had long since passed, and neither of them had mentioned her leaving. But neither had they discussed her staying permanently. It existed in a strange limbo, this arrangement, both of them seemingly content to let it continue without defining it too carefully. But now, with Christmas mentioned, the future suddenly felt more real, more present. "You will be here for Christmas, will you not?" Randall asked, and there was something vulnerable in his voice. "If you want me to be," Adelaide said. "I do," Randall said firmly. "Very much." Adelaide smiled, relief flooding through her. "Then I will be here." November brought the first real snow, and with it, the final preparations for winter. Randall worked long hours securing the ranch, moving cattle to winter pastures, stockpiling hay, repairing anything that might fail in the harsh weather to come. Adelaide helped where she could, and also focused on preserving food and preparing the house. She made quilts from scraps of fabric, layering them for warmth. She canned vegetables from the garden and made preserves from the wild plums Randall showed her growing along the creek. She baked bread and pies, filling the house with warm smells that made it feel like a home rather than just a place to sleep. The Pattersons invited them to Thanksgiving dinner, and the day was filled with warmth and laughter. Adelaide helped Mrs. Patterson in the kitchen while Randall and Jim discussed cattle prices and weather predictions. The children performed a small play they had prepared, and everyone ate until they could barely move. On the ride home, snow began to fall, fat flakes that caught in Adelaide's hair and on her eyelashes. She tilted her face up to the sky, smiling at the beauty of it. "You are not worried about the snow?" Randall asked, amused. "It is beautiful," Adelaide said. "In St. Louis, snow just meant mud and slush. Here it is like something from a painting." "Wait until February when you are sick of being trapped inside and everything is white as far as you can see," Randall said, but he was smiling. "Then we will see if you still think it is beautiful." "I will," Adelaide said confidently, "because I will be here and that is what matters." Randall looked at her, his expression serious. "Adelaide, I need to ask you something." Her heart began to pound. "What is it? Are you happy here? Truly happy, not just making the best of things?" Adelaide considered the question carefully. Was she happy? Yes, she realized. Despite the hard work and the isolation and the cold, she was happier than she had been in years, maybe happier than she had ever been. "Yes," she said simply. "I am happy." "Good," Randall said, and the relief in his voice was palpable. "I just needed to know. Because I want you to stay, and I need to know you want to be here, not that you feel obligated." "I want to be here," Adelaide assured him. "Very much." They rode the rest of the way in comfortable silence, the snow falling around them like a blessing. December arrived with bitter cold and shorter days. Adelaide worked on her green dress in the evenings, her needle flashing by lamplight while Randall worked on his ledgers or read from one of the few books they had. Sometimes he would read aloud, and Adelaide would work and listen to his deep voice bringing the words to life. It was during one of these evenings, a week before Christmas, that everything changed. Adelaide was hemming the dress and Randall was supposed to be reading, but when she glanced up, she found him watching her instead. "What is it?" she asked, self-conscious. "I was just thinking," Randall said slowly, "about how different this house feels now, how different I feel." "Is that good or bad?" Adelaide asked, setting down her sewing. "Good," Randall said. "Very good. Adelaide, these past few months with you here they have been the best months I have had since Sarah died, better than I thought I deserved to have again." Adelaide's heart was beating so hard she was sure he could hear it. "I feel the same way," she admitted. "I did not expect to find peace here, or friendship, or anything beyond work." "Is that all it is?" Randall asked quietly. "Friendship?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility and risk. Adelaide knew her answer could change everything, could ruin the careful balance they had built or transform it into something more. "No," she whispered. "It is more than that, at least for me." Randall stood and crossed to where she sat. He knelt beside her chair, taking her hand in his. His hand was rough and warm, and Adelaide felt a rush of emotion so strong it almost overwhelmed her. "For me too," Randall said, his dark eyes searching hers. "I did not think I could feel this way again. Did not want to, if I am being honest. It felt like a betrayal of Sarah. But you are not replacing her, Adelaide. You are something new, something I did not know I needed. These months, getting to know you, seeing your strength and kindness and spirit. I have fallen in love with you. I do not expect you to feel the same. I know you have been through so much, and maybe it is too soon, or maybe I am just a lonely rancher and you deserve better than that. But I had to tell you. I could not keep pretending I only cared about you as an employee or a friend." Adelaide felt tears spilling down her cheeks. "You are not just a lonely rancher," she said, her voice shaking. "You are a good man, the best man I have ever known, and I have fallen in love with you too. I did not mean to. I told myself I was done with love, done with trusting anyone. But you made me feel safe. You made me feel valued. And somewhere along the way, I stopped being able to imagine my life anywhere but here with you." Randall reached up and gently wiped away her tears with his thumb. "Then stay," he said. "Not as an employee. As my wife, if you will have me. I know it is fast, and I know we both have pasts, but I also know I love you and I want to build a future with you. I want to fill this house with the life and laughter it was meant to have. I want to wake up every morning knowing you are here. I want to grow old with you. Will you marry me, Adelaide?" Adelaide could barely breathe. 6 months ago, she had been a widow with nothing. Now she was being offered everything she had ever wanted. A home. A man who loved her. A future full of possibility. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." Randall smiled, a true, unguarded smile that transformed his face, and then he kissed her. It was gentle and sweet, a promise of all the kisses to come. And Adelaide felt something inside her that had been frozen for so long finally begin to thaw. They were married 2 days before Christmas in the small church in Julesburg, with the Pattersons as witnesses and half the town in attendance. Adelaide wore her green dress and carried a small bouquet of evergreen branches tied with ribbon. Randall wore his best suit and looked at her as though she were the most precious thing in the world. The ceremony was simple and beautiful. When Reverend Walsh pronounced them husband and wife and Randall kissed her, Adelaide felt joy so pure and complete that she wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. The community hosted a celebration at the church hall, with food and music and dancing. Adelaide danced with Randall, with Jim Patterson, with the doctor and the storekeeper, and a dozen other men whose names she was still learning. But always, her eyes returned to Randall, her husband, and found him watching her with a look of such love and contentment that it made her heart ache in the best possible way. They drove home as the sun was setting, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and gold. The ranch looked peaceful and welcoming, smoke curling from the chimney where Adelaide had left a fire burning in the hearth. "Welcome home, Mrs. Sutton," Randall said as he helped her down from the wagon. "I have been home for months," Adelaide said, smiling up at him. "This just makes it official." Inside, the house was warm and filled with the scent of the evergreen boughs Adelaide had used to decorate. She had made it festive for Christmas for them, for this new beginning. Randall pulled her close and they stood together in front of the fire, wrapped in each other's arms. "I never thought I would be this happy again," Randall murmured into her hair. "Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for staying. Thank you for asking me to," Adelaide replied. "Thank you for seeing me, for valuing me, for loving me." That night, they came together as husband and wife, and it was everything Adelaide had never known it could be. Tenderness and passion, patience and desire, two people who had both known loss and loneliness finding completeness in each other. Afterward, Adelaide lay in Randall's arms in his bedroom, now their bedroom, and felt at peace in a way she had never imagined possible. Christmas morning dawned bright and cold. Randall surprised Adelaide with gifts: a new heavy coat, warm gloves, and a beautiful silver locket. Inside the locket was a tiny photograph of the two of them, taken in town the previous week by a traveling photographer. "So you will always know you are loved," Randall said as he fastened it around her neck. Adelaide gave him a warm scarf she had knitted, and a new shirt she had sewn from fabric she had purchased with her own carefully saved wages. But her real gift was the words she whispered in his ear. "I am fairly certain I am with child." Randall pulled back, his eyes wide with wonder and disbelief. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be," Adelaide said. "I did not want to say anything until I was sure, but it has been nearly 2 months now and I have all the signs. We are going to have a baby, Randall." Randall lifted her and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "A baby! We are going to have a baby. Adelaide, this is the best Christmas gift anyone could have ever given me. I love you so much." "I love you too," Adelaide said, laughing and crying at the same time. The winter passed in a blur of happiness. Adelaide and Randall grew closer with each passing day, learning each other's rhythms and quirks, building a partnership based on mutual respect and deep love. They talked about everything, from the practical matters of running the ranch to their hopes for their child, to their dreams for the future. As Adelaide's pregnancy progressed, Randall became almost comically protective. He insisted she rest more, do less heavy work, take care of herself. Adelaide found it both exasperating and endearing, this man who had lived so independently for so long now hovering over her like a worried mother hen. "I am not fragile," she protested one day when he tried to insist she stay inside rather than help hang laundry. "I know you are not," Randall said, "but you are precious to me and so is that baby. Let me take care of you, please." How could she argue with that? So Adelaide let herself be cared for, something she had never experienced in her previous marriage. And she cared for Randall in return, making sure he ate properly, that he did not work himself to exhaustion, that he knew how much she loved him. Spring came, and with it the return of green to the prairie and new life everywhere. The cattle dropped their calves, the horses their foals, and Adelaide's belly grew round and full. She felt the baby move inside her, small flutters at first, then stronger kicks and rolls that made Randall's eyes light up with wonder when he felt them. Mrs. Patterson came to stay a week before Adelaide's due date, and Dr. Martin promised to come at first word. Adelaide was nervous but not afraid. She was strong, and she was surrounded by people who cared about her. Whatever came, she would handle it. The baby came on a warm June afternoon, after a labor that was long but mercifully uncomplicated. Adelaide heard Randall pacing in the hallway, heard Mrs. Patterson telling him to calm down, and would have laughed if she had the breath for it. And then, with one final push, her son came into the world, wailing his displeasure at the bright, cold air. "A boy," Dr. Martin announced, placing the baby on Adelaide's chest. "A fine, healthy boy." Adelaide looked down at her son, at his red, wrinkled face and shock of dark hair, and felt her heart expand in ways she had not known were possible. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We have been waiting for you." Randall was allowed in a few minutes later after the doctor and Mrs. Patterson had cleaned up and made Adelaide comfortable. He approached the bed slowly, his eyes wide with awe as he looked at his wife and newborn son. "Adelaide," he breathed. "He is perfect. Meet your son," Adelaide said, carefully placing the baby in Randall's arms. "Meet Robert James Sutton." "Robert," Randall repeated, tears streaming unashamedly down his face. "After your father. That is perfect. Hello, Robert. I am your father, and I promise to love you and protect you and teach you everything I know. You are the luckiest boy in the world because you have Adelaide for your mother." Adelaide felt tears sliding down her own cheeks as she watched Randall cradling their son with such tenderness and wonder. This was what she had always wanted without knowing it. This man, this child, this life. She had come to this ranch to wash clothes and ended up washing away the loneliness and pain of the past, replacing it with love and hope, and a future brighter than she had ever dared imagine. The years that followed were filled with hard work and simple joys. Robert grew into a sturdy, curious toddler who followed Randall everywhere, determined to help with ranch work even when he was still too small to be useful. Adelaide gave birth to 2 more children, a daughter named Sarah Catherine, after Randall's first wife, and then another son, Thomas David, named after Adelaide's father. The house that had been so silent for so long was filled with laughter and noise and the chaos of children. Adelaide never forgot that first day she walked to the ranch, dusty and desperate, not knowing if she would even be given a chance. She never forgot Randall's kindness in taking her in, or the way they had slowly, carefully built something beautiful from their shared loneliness. Randall never forgot the moment he saw Adelaide walking toward his ranch, the set of her shoulders and the determination in her eyes. He never forgot how she had brought light back into his life, how she had given him a second chance at happiness when he thought that part of his life was over. They worked the ranch together, raised their children together, grew old together. There were hard times, as there always were. Years when the cattle prices dropped or the weather was harsh or sickness threatened. But they faced everything together, and that made all the difference. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Randall and Adelaide sat on the porch as the sun set, watching their grandchildren play in the yard. Robert had married a nice girl from town and had 3 children of his own. Sarah was engaged to the new schoolteacher, a gentle man who clearly adored her. Thomas was still young, only 15, but already showing signs of being as skilled a rancher as his father. "You ever think about what might have been?" Randall asked, taking Adelaide's hand. "If you had not seen that advertisement, if you had not come here," Adelaide shuddered. "I try not to. Nothing good would have come of that. Everything good in my life started the day I walked to this ranch." Mine too, Randall agreed. I was just existing before you came, Adelaide, not really living. You saved me. We saved each other, Adelaide corrected gently. Two lonely people who needed to wash away the past and start fresh. Best decision I ever made, asking you to stay, Randall said. Best decision I ever made, saying yes, Adelaide replied. As the sun dipped below the horizon, and the evening star appeared in the darkening sky, they sat together in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, hearts full. The ranch that had once been a place of loneliness and grief was now a home filled with love and life. The future stretched before them, bright with possibility, and they faced it together, as they had faced everything since that dusty August day when a desperate woman came to wash clothes and ended up washing away both their loneliness forever. Their legacy continued through their children and grandchildren. Robert expanded the ranch, adding more land and diversifying into horse breeding. Sarah and her husband started a school in Julesburg, educating the next generation of frontier children. Thomas became one of the most respected ranchers in Colorado, known for his integrity and skill. But more than land or reputation or success, the legacy Adelaide and Randall left was one of love. They showed their children and grandchildren what a true partnership looked like, built on mutual respect, trust, and deep affection. They taught them that second chances exist, that it is never too late to start over, and that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. Adelaide lived to be 73 years old, still sharp and vibrant until the very end. She died peacefully in her sleep, with Randall holding her hand. Her last words were simple: "I love you. Thank you for the life we built together." Randall followed her 6 months later, unable to bear being without her after 28 years of marriage. His children found him in the bedroom they had shared, lying on the bed, a peaceful expression on his face and Adelaide's handkerchief clutched in his hand. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a pair of cottonwood trees that had been saplings when Adelaide first arrived. On the shared headstone, their children had carved a simple inscription: Randall Sutton and Adelaide Harper Sutton. Together they built a home, a family, and a love that lasted forever. And every year, their descendants gathered at the ranch to celebrate the anniversary of Randall and Adelaide's first meeting, the day she came to wash clothes and ended up washing away his loneliness, and her own, and finding something far more precious than either of them had dared to hope for. A love that would echo through generations, a testament to the power of second chances and the courage it takes to open your heart again after it has been broken. The ranch still stands today, worked by the fourth and fifth generations of Suttons, all of them carrying forward the legacy of hard work, integrity, and love that Randall and Adelaide established all those years ago. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the sun sets over the Colorado plains in shades of gold and orange, people swear they can see two figures sitting on the old porch, hands intertwined, watching over the land and the family they built together. A love story that began with loneliness and ended with everything they could have dreamed of and more.